Everyone wants to take their business, their skills, to the next level. Small and mid-sized business owners have exceptional insight into how to do this. They endure and thrive because they find ways to overcome the challenges that come their way, and they can teach us valuable lessons to apply to our own companies and lives. Stephen Nooner, founder and owner of Alkali, a company with a unique process that helps businesses more effectively buy and manage their insurance programs. And Bob Gibbons, builder of Riata Commercial Realty, a real estate advisor and tenant advocate, are two prominent Metroplex businessmen who, along with their weekly guests, will ask their and your probing questions, finding impactful solutions that will help you reach for the next level. Here are your hosts, Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons.
Welcome to the Next Level, conversations that propel business. This is Bob Gibbons.
And I'm Stephen Nooner, and we're really excited today because we've got a great guest. Stephen Anderson is here. He's the founder and chief creative officer of a lot of companies. You are a busy guy. No I'm going to rattle through them real quick. Total Patient Service, Crown Counsel, Capstone Dental, Dental Warranty Corp, a former Next Level guest, Smiles for Life Foundation, and Eagle U. They're based in Irving, employ 75 people. And if you want to learn more, visit stephenjanderson.com. Welcome.
You're not going to do all the websites for all of his organizations?
Then the show would be over.
I checked to make sure that you could pretty much find most of these companies off stephenjanderson.com.
I looked at every single one of those websites last night, and I was exhausted. I didn't read them all. I didn't have that kind of time.
Bob can't read, but, hey, I'm just kidding.
Wow. Well, thanks so much for being here with us today. We're
Thanks
excited.
for having me.
So we always like to start off the shows with what we call wisdom from others or wisdom of others.
Right.
And we like a quote. And we're actually going to use your quote today. And I'm very intimidated by this quote because it's from Gandhi. So the only thing better than Gandhi would have been, Stephen Nooner. But anyway, he said, one cannot do right in one area of life whilst he is doing wrong in any other area. Life is one indivisible whole. Why is that something that resonates with you?
I think when, I'll take this from a business standpoint, when running a business, there's so many things to keep track of, so many different, so you got all the dials on the meter and all the instrumentation to look at on the dashboard, if you will. And so you may be doing great in one area, but then if something else is out of alignment, then the whole is really the sum of the parts, and there's a lot of things you got to keep track of. I look at the same thing in an organization, that the organization is as good as its weakest person. And so it really is, you just can't focus on one thing. It really is the whole. The whole is made up of the parts, and it's really looking at where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and how strong is the whole thing. So it's, especially, in today's environment, when you look at all of the casualties going on in the entertainment world, a perfect example of that deal is great successes, in the limelight. But if there's stuff going on in the background,
it'll eventually come to fruition.
You got a problem.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people who've said, well, that's business, as if it's somehow separated from what you're doing on, a weekend morning that you might be going to church or something. And, you can't. If you're doing something in business that you can't talk about openly and comfortably in church, something's wrong.
So a big part of what we do, big part of one of the common themes that runs through all of our businesses, a big part of it is developing organizations. So we work with dental practices, we build dental practices, and then on the charity side, we have a program where we work with high school and college students to give them a 7-year head start on their career. Well, what do those two things have to do with each other? Well, we have a lot of our clients that will sponsor young people from their community to go through that program because it's good for the student, it's good for their practice, it's good for business. In other words, all those things are so interconnected.
They're aligned.
Exactly. And as a part of that, I've involved, as an example, my kids in a lot of what we do, business-wise and charity-wise, because it gives them a bigger picture of what's going on in the world and what their potential is, and it's all connected. I don't think you can compartmentalize stuff. It all works together.
So let's kind of rewind back to the beginning and how you first got going into the entrepreneurial world, and then how did that take root and then spread to all that you're a part of now?
It's been a fascinating journey. I grew up in a very corporate home. My dad ran the largest ad agency in the Western United States his whole career. And so I grew up on a very steady diet of advertising and marketing conversation. We'd actually talk about it at the dinner table. And I remember conversations about what colors evoke what emotions and when you can advertise and when you can't. So I got a pretty steady
It's an
diet
awesome
of that
education.
growing up. And he was very much a corporate guy. I mean, he worked for the same company his whole career, was very successful. And I think deep down inside of him, he kind of had that desire that he kind of wished he could have started his own deal. I'm the last of 7 kids, so I've got the last born syndrome. And if you know anything about birth order, the last born is usually the rebellious one. And so I never did anything crazy, but I did kind of cut my own path. And I think like everybody else, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. I started my first business when I was like 12 years old. Just doing simple things like lawn care and paper routes and that kind of stuff, and getting into college, I was trying to figure out what direction. And one of the most significant experiences I have had, and we talk a lot about this with the young people that we work with at Eagle U, is I went around and interviewed over 60 different people during my college years that were doing things that I thought I wanted to do.
Wow.
I interviewed them.
Right.
They didn't interview me. I was
Exactly.
interviewing them.
Yeah.
And, just questions, how they got started, what made them successful, if they had to start all over again, what would they do? And it was the most amazing educational experience I had had to that point. I learned far more doing that than I ever learned in the college classroom.
Wow.
And that the kind of my formula came together. I learned something from every single person that I talked to. And sometimes even some of those lessons weren't conscious. They were some of them were unconscious lessons. I was kind of educating my intuition of what works for me and what felt the best and what really appealed. And I walked away from that experience with a pretty good roadmap of what my setup was going to have to be for me to be, for me to feel fulfilled and like I was doing something. The amazing thing was I got some great job offers out of it, and I didn't take any of them. And so at the end of the deal, I had stumbled across one particular mentor who was in startup stage, and my gut told me there was a great opportunity there. And so I packed up, came here to Texas. I showed up and I announced that we were going into business together.
To him?
Yeah, I didn't ask him.
He didn't know that.
I just showed up and I said, we're going to go to work together. And he said, well, I'm not hiring. And I said, well, I'm not looking for a job. I said, I'm here to go into business with you, not I don't want a job. And he said, well, what does that mean? And I said, well, I'm going to go to work and we're going to figure out how to build something great. And when we do, we're going to do it together. We're going to be business partners. Well, he couldn't, it's free labor, right? So he was quite a bit older than I was and had some great entrepreneurial success. And that was part of my design was I wanted to work side by side with somebody who had done it. And
Did he resist that, or was he all in on that?
He resisted it until the offer was so good he couldn't turn it down. I mean, who's going to turn down free labor?
Sure.
No strings attached.
And what was the business he was already in?
So it was really the beginnings of what we have today. So it was kind of a small, kind of homespun, kind of education business where we were doing kind of marketing and sales related training courses for businesses. And it was kind of the seed of an idea.
Sure.
And so I just got to work filling seats, just calling businesses, getting people to show up to go through the training. And that was really the beginning of our work together. And it continued to grow, and we eventually put our partnership together, and we were in business together for over 15 years.
Wow.
It was a great mentor relationship and taught me a lot.
And was that dental focused at that
But
time?
originally it was not. It started out as marketing and sales training, and then we had some dentists that showed up that really found some appeal of what we were doing into dentistry, and we didn't get it. We did not get the connection. And until we went in and we started seeing form and function and what was going on, and then we understood what the attraction was.
Yeah, because it seems like now almost all your businesses are really,
They're really
focused
yeah,
around the dental practice.
Exactly.
space.
There's a lot of dental continuity there.
So
yeah.
in regards to the mentor, I mean, obviously working side by side, but is there anything that just sticks out that you're like, I'm not here where I'm at today if this wasn't shared or imparted to me?
Yeah, he showed me the value of and how to build a market.
Okay.
You know, his whole background had been in insurance. And so there's not very many things that are tougher to sell than insurance. And he had come up with some very innovative ways to to sell a pretty innovative product. But I learned from him how to create a market for a product or a service and all the things that go along with that. And the difference between, creating a market and selling a product, because they're two very different things. They're related, but they're very, very different. And he was a master at creating a market so that then there was plenty of prospects to sell to. So creating more qualified, less resistant prospects for whatever the product or service is.
So is creating a market, well, let me ask it this way. What's the difference between creating a market and identifying your prospect base and selling to them?
Yeah, so for example, most organizations, they'll hire salespeople to go market and sell their product. And that creating a market is the toughest work there is, to go out and create a market for something. And so the difference is when you create, the ideal is to create an insulated market where it's difficult for the competition to get in, and where you have a captive audience with the people who are great prospects for your service or product. And then you can sell all day long because a salesperson then has good qualified, preheated, receptive prospects to sell to, whereas the competition's out cold calling or just trying to find somebody to talk to.
So is that why did you create that market and then you just find all these different ways to sell to that market, and that's why you end up with 6 or 7 companies all selling to the same market?
Yeah, we find different needs and then fill the need in the market. Exactly right.
And as those needs, is it just by being connected, or do you see certain trends happening that cause you to?
Yeah, just pick up on trends every day. And so, for example, in one of the big trends in healthcare today, when you think about it, the number one frontline healthcare professional today is your dentist. Most of America does not see any other healthcare professional more frequently than their dentist.
Yeah.
You don't think of it that way, but you're seeing, if you're doing what you ought to do and you're going to your dentist every 3 to 6 months, you're seeing your dentist more than your physician. You can't even see a physician anymore. They've disappeared. And unless you got some kind of chronic illness, you're seeing that healthcare professional more frequently. So huge opportunity now that is on the front line of healthcare. Number one healthcare professional.
All right, we're going to have to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the tragedy that ended it all and what happened as a result. Stay tuned.
Stick around.
And now, Confessions of a Recovering Landlord.
This is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty, and I am your recovering landlord. After 20 years as a landlord, I now use that experience only for the benefit of companies that lease or buy office buildings and warehouses. Today's confession: knowledge is power. We all negotiate from a position of power and strength, or at least we want to. In any negotiation, the party with the most knowledge probably has the upper hand. And landlords count on this being the case whenever you're negotiating a lease, because most landlords are professional real estate investors and they hire professional leasing agents and property managers. Landlords are in the market every day negotiating leases, while tenants probably only negotiate 1, maybe 2 leases every few years. So tenants feel outgunned. Don't let landlords have all the power. As a former landlord for 20 years, I understand how landlords think and what motivates them. So let me put that knowledge and experience to work on your side of the negotiation. To learn more, contact me at texastenantrep.com. Again, that's texastenantrep.com.
Have you started making plans to take your business to the next level in 2016? Hi, I'm Stephen Nooner, founder and CEO of Alkali. We have a trademark process called the Empowered Advantage that enables CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs to more effectively buy and manage their insurance. Before sitting down to make your plans for the new year, here are just a few things to consider. Would you say that you have an actual insurance strategy, one that you can articulate, or have you just purchased a policy here and there over the years? If you have an insurance strategy, was it discussed under the pressure of a renewal deadline or considered earlier in the year to avoid fire drill decision making? If your answer was no to either of these questions, then you may not have the right partner on your team. Visit alkaliservices.com to contact us and take the next step to a bigger and better future.
I'm Shane Hobbs, CEO of Dalworth Restoration.
And I'm James Smith, CEO of Dalworth Clean. And, I can't believe they didn't want to talk about getting pet stains out of carpet on the show.
Welcome back to The Next Level. We're here with Stephen J. Anderson. If you want to learn more about Stephen, please visit stephenjanderson.com.
Okay, so before the break, I gave the hook of the tragedy that ended it all and what happened next.
Brilliant hook it was, too, Bob. I really like it.
Oh, Stephen, my life with the Nooner is interesting. So tell us what the tragedy was and why did it almost end it all?
Yeah, so we were on family vacation in Park City, Utah, and it was the day before my oldest daughter's birthday, and we were getting ready for a big family reunion. I had all my family coming in from all over the country and looking forward to a great 4 or 5 days together. And I got a phone call from the son of my business partner, and his opening question was, "Are you sitting down?"
That's never good.
And that's never good. And so I said, "Well, what's up?" And he said, "Well, Dad just killed himself."
Oh, my goodness.
And so it was one of those moments where my whole business life just flashed before my eyes, because we were pretty high profile. We didn't just own a business. We were pretty high profile in our industry's eyes, out there on stage every day. We were known, and this was not a good thing from a PR standpoint, as well as wasn't a good thing from a business standpoint. There was a lot of things in flux at that point, and so.
And setting those two things aside, if I can interrupt,
Yeah.
It's got to be a major personal situation, because you went to this guy and said you're going to be his business partner and sort of
He's
forced him into
mentored
that,
him.
and 15 years of your life from 21, 22 years old.
Mm-hmm. He was a significant mentor in my life.
Huge.
Significant contributor. So yeah, it was a huge blow, and I will never forget that night. My dad had just shown up for the family reunion. He's one of the best PR guys in the world. I mean, he spent his whole career in advertising. And so I had him at my side, and I had another mentor of mine that I have a huge amount of respect for that had engineered the whole Just Say No to Drugs campaign during the Reagan days. And he was on the phone with us, and we kind of mapped out, how do we deal with this from a public relations standpoint, and what do we say, and how do you deal with this really sensitive issue? And I'll never forget that moment of having just all that great wisdom on both sides of me to help me navigate through pretty choppy waters. So that was really a new beginning. I mean, it was a crisis, and I'm a big believer in that principle that many times, and really the principle is that the seed of sometimes the greatest success is within the greatest crisis or setback or failure. And I was introduced to another me that I had never had to really it really brought out a different side of me that I really had to step up and really figure some things out. And it was the launching point for many of the things that we do today.
So was he kind of the front man of the show, so to speak?
In many ways he was originally, and we had as time went on, we had a very interesting dynamic, very opposite personalities from an operations standpoint. We spent a lot of time on stage together as well, and our personalities were very different. And so he was kind of the cut up, and I was the straight guy, and so we had a great dynamic on stage. And I miss him. It's been he had a huge impact on my life. 15 years we worked together.
And how long has that been?
It's now been almost 15 years since he's
Wow.
been gone.
So, if you don't mind, so a lot of things gone forward ahead, and you've had a lot of success from that new side of you that's been released, and I've witnessed tangentially some of your success by just meeting some of the people that are connected to your organization, and you and I got connected, through some of those introductions. And the one thing I got to say, and the reason why I invited you on the show is you've got some really amazing people.
Thank you.
And then when I asked you, I didn't know you had a book. So literally, go to YouTube, check out it's the Culture of Success. He's got the cultureofsuccessbook.com.
Right.
But I mean, you're doing something right. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think everyone should hear that story as well.
Yeah. So I've gained over the years a huge appreciation for the kind of culture that you build in any organization. Every organization has a culture. Your family has a culture. Where you work has a culture. Any organization has a culture. And what culture is a combination of the values and beliefs and the systems that you put in place to act on those beliefs, and then how everybody in the organization executes around those systems which reflect your beliefs. And at the end of the day, especially in service businesses, we do business with people that we like in places where we feel good. And I have a whole series in the Culture of Success, what I call natural laws. There's 10 of them in the book. And what a natural law is it is a foundational, irrefutable law that kind of runs things, whether you like it or not. It's active. And if you align yourself with natural laws and build on them, then you have a greater chance of success. And so one of those natural laws is what I call the law of emotion, that says that we make decisions emotionally, many times unconsciously, but we make decisions emotionally, and then we justify that emotional decision with logic. And so your culture at the end of the day is kind of, there's some tangible things around it, but at the end of the day, it's a feeling. It's a feeling of, how do I feel in this space with these people that I work with or that I'm doing business with? How do I feel? And there's a lot of things you can build around that to make that and create it. So you either have a culture by design or you have a culture by default, but every organization has a culture. You just have to decide whether you're going to take control of it and build it by design, or whether you're just going to kind of let it happen. And what we found in most organizations, if you don't stand up and take charge of it and build it, you'll end up having a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum, and it will fill it with a culture that you may not like.
And that resonated with me. So the show for another day, I'm a science nerd. I was on my way to dental school. But the law of entropy, I love that. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Absolutely. There? So law of entropy, and if if you have any science background, you remember from physics. So law of entropy basically says that matter over time gravitates to its lowest, most disorganized space. I mean, it's just the universe tends toward chaos and everything comes disorganized. And so you're constantly having to put things back together again. And we spend an extraordinary amount of time just in our lives just holding stuff together. And in an organization, the bigger the organization gets, the more time you have to spend combating entropy and keeping everything together, including the culture. The culture has to be tended to, has to be maintained, you got to work on it all the time.
So with so many different entities that you're involved with, that you've started and created, do you have a different culture for every one of those, or are they all sort of blended into one?
There is some continuity between all of them, and they all have their own culture based on the kind of business it is and how it's run and the principles behind it. So it's for me, it's putting the right principles in place. Finding the right people that subscribe to those principles and then letting them run with it, based on those principles.
If you had to pick one of your many children, right?
Yeah.
That you're most excited about, passionate about, what is it right now?
I'm a big believer in what I call doing good. Now, here's an interesting distinction. There's a phrase that's crept in our vernacular of giving back, right? And we talk a lot about, what's your corporate giving program? What are you doing to give back? And that what that implies. I mean, if you have to give something back,
Cook it.
it implies you took it.
Yeah.
And I think that comes out of this kind of maybe Puritan origin in our country where, profit is bad and so you got to give it back to absolve yourself of your sins for making a profit. Profit's good. I mean, profit is what makes it all work. And I believe that every organization has a responsibility to pay it forward, to do good. And there's a lot of things that every organization does to do good besides charitable stuff. I mean, just providing jobs so people have a place to work, that's doing good. Having a great culture where people can come to work and they feel good about themselves and can do something for them, that's doing good.
Providing meaningful value to a dentist that better runs his practice and
is
impacts
doing good.
It's doing
And
good.
that's the whole basis of capitalism, right? A fair exchange. If I'm getting more value from you than I'm having to pay you to give it to me, it's
doing
that's
good.
a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah.
The thing that drives me crazy is whenever somebody has a huge number of those individual transactions, each of which were very fair, and that all adds up to a big net worth, and all of a sudden he's vilified and he's a bad person, or she is. And that's insane. I had this exact conversation over Thanksgiving with somebody from another country, and he could not get it through his brain that all of those things added up does not result in a negative.
Right.
All
It's
the positives can't add up to a negative, but he still couldn't come to grips with that.
So exactly. And so, there's a lot of things that we do on the charity side of things, which I love to do. We do a huge campaign that has now turned into a nationwide charity campaign called Smiles for Life. Okay. And it's a really cool deal where you can go in and get your teeth whitened, and 100% of the money goes to kids. So it's a great way to do good, and really in any community across the country. You can go to smilesforlife.org and get involved in that.
It goes to kids to do what?
Goes to kids with all kinds of children's charitable programs, inner city programs, health programs. A lot of things we do for kids who have special needs. A lot of things here in Dallas. We've helped build 3 different child life zones in their play therapy zones in both children's hospitals in Dallas and Fort Worth. So that's an example. One of our programs is called Eagle U. That's in contrast to Turkey Kindergarten. And its whole purpose is to help high school and college students get a 7-year head start on their career. And so we surround them with all kinds of things that'll help them get ahead. And we do that for students all over the country.
And what shocked me about that, and unless I read it wrong, on your website, it's a 7-year head start, but they get that in 4 days.
4 days.
That blew my mind.
Yeah, and so we do it's very much a contrarian course. For example, we show them how to get a job without using a resume. We show them how to study less and make better grades. So it's all things that, takes years for people to figure out. So we do that. That's at eagleu.org. And we work with high school, college age students from all over the country.
Stephen, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. But thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you.
We're just going to hit a couple of your websites. EagleUniversity.org, you just mentioned, smilesforlife.org. Those are your charitable organizations, and then StephenJAnderson.com. And that's Stephen with a V, by the way, not a PH, just in case you
got it.
cared.
Correct.
And you can go to
The right way to spell it.
nextlevelshow.com to learn about the show. We'll see you next week.
Spread the word.
You have been listening to The Next Level, Conversations That Propel Business with Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons. Join us every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. for more prolific conversations that will take your business to the next level.